have or the posture that we walk in, but gratefully for me, in the way that God took me through grief, it was a much more raw, real, I think, Jesus-shaped way, and that's what I want to share with you. So this is the very personal way that God led me through grief, and I would want to say that everybody's wired differently. You know, God made us each differently. We express ourselves differently, and so this isn't like, this is how to go through grief, but this is how he led me. And yet, I guess a caveat in saying that is that you'll see that I followed Jesus in how he went through tough stuff. So I would just put that out there as like, he's a pretty good role model to follow. He's right about everything and everything that he did. So my prayer would be that this helps you. Like I said, if there's a grief or a loss that you've not fully processed through, and I think the Holy Spirit is going to speak to you about that, you know, that may be one thing that you'll do some of that processing now, or what you may be going through now, any kind of a loss, or what you'll go through in the future. If I can equip you a little bit for the future, because you're going to lose some people, and you'll be reunited with them in heaven, but there's a gap. There's a gap time that's pretty severely painful, and that's what I want to share with you. I want to be raw, I want to be real, and let you know the real deal of what it was like for me. I find that I'm a person who doesn't mince words. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm not a Pollyanna, and yet I feel the joy of the Lord, and it is my strength. So I'm not depressed. I hope you'll see that as you get to know me a little bit in these moments. And for those of you who are led to do a deeper dive afterwards, man, I look forward to that, because I could talk about this all day. And it's interesting because ever since Ron died, within about, 2 years, pastors started to invite me to their conferences to talk about grief. And it's crazy to say this, and yet it's true, that it is the most fulfilling and joyous thing that I talk about. I guess I might say second to sharing with people how to share the gospel with others, because that's like the ultimate. But it's so good of God to take something that has been the worst, most devastating experience of my life and give me an opportunity to talk to others about it, and that I actually feel joy doing it. That's only God. You know, only God can turn all things around, you know, for the good, as he does. So I'm excited to be here with you. So I'm going to share 3 things: a brief overview of my life, the ministry, the loss of my husband. That'll be pretty short. The bulk of what I share will be 5 ways that Jesus taught me to grieve, patterned after how he did, and then a few perspectives I learned along the way. And there might be not time for that at the end, and then I'll touch on that in the deeper dive. So I've served as president for Align Life Ministries for going on 40 years. I like to joke that I was 10 when I started, but I was not. I was 24, making me 63. But man, 40 of the just most rewarding years of my life. Align Life Ministries started in 1985 as the Crisis Pregnancy Center of Lebanon County. Then we opened a location in Lancaster and Columbia and Ephrata. Along the way, we changed our name to Susquehanna Valley Pregnancy Services. And then as God taught us to connect with him in intentional worship on the job, when you connect with God in worship and in prayer, you start hearing God's wisdom, and God started pouring his direct wisdom into our ministry, and then we would do things according to his ways. And he also taught us to really be in tight, close relationships with each other. So I've written a book. It's on the back table for any of you who would like to learn that kind of a paradigm. It's pretty much probably how you do church here, but we can be a certain way in church and a different way at ministry or a different way at work. But this is a way that God's taught us that we are aligning with him constantly. And so he showed us that instead of having a geographically based name of Susquehanna Valley Pregnancy Services, that we should have a spiritual name, which is Align So we're aligning with God, and he's, giving his aligning wisdom to us. And then the word life, align life, that's about the spiritual life of our clients, these young moms and dads who are facing abortion, which is their number one need, is their spiritual need. Their number one need is not to carry their baby to term. Their greatest need is for a relationship with Jesus Christ. So we are a very gospel-oriented sharing ministry. So Align Life is for the spiritual life of our clients and the discipleship that we do and the getting them into local churches, and then the physical lives of their preborn babies, which of course are created in God's image, and he wants them to be born. So we kind of have a twofold approach there in life. So Align Life Ministries, and that's plural because we do all this pregnancy ministry in our 2 counties, but we also do equipping resources, which are resources for the church at large. As you know, as you're in a church for years or a ministry or a business, you learn some things from the Lord. And God told us about 15 years ago that those things that we were learning were not just for us. We should make them available for the local churches and the national churches and internationally. It's part of why I wrote that book. We have other things that we're writing. We just kind of have messages from God that we know just aren't for us. We want to steward them, give them out. And we also do strategic partnerships. And I won't get into all of that, but we're better together. Jesus prayed in John 17 that we would all be one, and so we've learned to partner with other pregnancy ministries in the state of Pennsylvania. We lead a coalition of the 90-some pregnancy ministries in Pennsylvania. We speak into the nation. I can't get into all the details of this, but there are groups of people joining together to ramp up the pro-life messaging in our nation that would be new, that would be fresh wine in fresh wineskins. So we're involved with that, and also with an international ministry that is dealing with the mission field created by abortion around the world, of which there are 60 million abortions a year around the world. And we just had a summit in Malta, which is where Paul was shipwrecked. If you can picture that, below Italy. And there were 155 nations represented of the 198 that exist. And we got together, forget this is November of 2023, a full day of repenting for the sin of abortion, 155 leaders, pro-life pastors, ministry leaders from around the world repenting for the sin of abortion in their nations, and then hearing the second day what God's doing all around the world to raise up life-affirming ministries, which he's doing a lot, and then 3, listening in prayer to what the Father had to say as far as, okay, here's the current strategies, here's the current vision. It was powerful, and the outgrowth of that is amazing, as there's just a lot of coming together and people partnering all around the world. So, years back, God said to us that, like basically Acts 1:8, where it says, you are to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, your little hometown, Judea, a little bit out further, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. And God put that in our hearts, and we knew that, yep, that's us, and we're going to follow those leads, those relationships, those kingdom connections. And so when you think of Align Life Ministries, think primarily of the pregnancy services in these 2 counties of Lebanon and Lancaster. Also know that we're partnering statewide, nationwide, and internationally, just because that's what God called us to share around the world and to share what he's given us. We don't have any smarts on our own, but we can all. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. We're his sheep. And we're just listening to him, we're hearing his voice, and they fan out into